Welcome to the Week 3 recap and Week 4 preview for Major League Balatro. Strap in, we have a lot to go over, and let's jump into it. The first game of the week was myself versus Gothic Lord UK. We had a fantastic match last season, and I was expecting nothing less. Gothic did take me to Gold Stake. I chose Yellow Deck for Game 1, and maybe unfortunately for Gothic's game plan, Game 1 turned out to be very White Stake adjacent, as an early mail-in rebate, an early Ancient Joker meant that the economy was plenty, the points were easy, and I was able to deck manipulate into a retrigger build and score 3 million to complete a sweep in Game 1. Game 2 wouldn't come as easy as we exchanged lives back and forth, but with 2 lives remaining, I was once again able to get a retrigger build on board, this time using Photo, Bloodstone, and Dusk, and I was able to take Game 2 from Gothic. Game 3 was extremely fun. Magic deck White Stake, and I was able to get the full retrigger glass Red Seal idol build, score E19 for the fantasy players, and finish off the match sweep with 2 lives remaining in this one. Game 2 was Nandre versus Dr. Spectre. This is one of the most entertaining matches from last season, is why it was a featured game this week, and without fail, Nandre taking us to Plasma deck in Game 1, Doc taking us to Gold Stake. This one was really interesting because it wasn't as difficult as Plasma Gold Stake can be, but still tough enough that you're going to see lives lost to the blind. Both these players end up with a Bloodstone build and actually gain York right at the end, but Nandre unable to fully transition the molt, just not enough X molt there. Luckily for Doc, they were able to find a photograph and make that transition, and Doc is going to take the first game 3 lives to 1. Game 2, it was kind of a similar story where Nandre wasn't able to transition to molt quite yet with the family and other aspects, but because Doc found both a photograph and a brainstorm with all the economy that they had, they were able to make that transition to molt and once again come away with the match victory, this time 2 lives to none. And then Game 3, we moved to Erratic deck, finally off Plasma onto White Stake. And this one was very, very close. Doc had a 3-1 life lead, and Nandre actually had a possibility of beating Doc here if they were able to get their big hand lined up with Loyalty card, but they were not, and Doc ends up taking the sweep in the match 3 games to none. The next game was Roffle versus Nito, and last season Nito almost took Roffle out of a playoff position in the final game of the season, so Roffle was not going to take this game lightly. They're playing on Black Stake Ghost deck for Game 1, and Roffle was able to get an interesting build to work for him with just a polychrome photograph and some glass cards. They were able to take Game 1 away from Nito. Game 2, we played Ghost deck, this time on White Stake, and there was loads of retriggering available for Roffle with Sock, Dusk, and Hack. Add in a photograph and an Agent Joker, and you have yourself a massive build that was able to score 8 billion points and take Game 2 3 lives to none over Nito. In Game 3, Blueprint showed up in the shop, and while Nito honestly was starting to get the build together, the polychrome glass cards mixed with this Blueprint Dusk Chad photo build for Mr. Roffle was enough to put up E11 and take the final game in a 4-0 life sweep. Roffle moving up in the Onyx division. The following game would be Bean, our current leader in the league, against Mouth, and what a game we were in for. So first game went to Green deck White Stake, and we had a very classic retriggering build type gameplay here. The difference really being the fact that Bean was able to make more economy on this White Stake difficulty, buy more vouchers, and get the brainstorm. That was the key difference maker. Brainstorming the idol meant just so many more points for Bean, and they were able to take this game in the final life. Mouth almost snatching this game early, winning the first 3 PvPs before Bean was able to get that econ going and build a comeback. Game 2 was going to be Gold Stake Red deck, and this time Mouth, with the upset, was able to take the game, had a load of Red Seal Kings, had a photograph, had a family, and was able to just barely beat out Bean here in the first few PvPs, taking this 3 lives to none. And then the final game, the decider, despite a negative Bean on Bean's side that actually came from an unfortunate Ecto, Mouth would be the one who comes out on top due to the fact that Mouth was able to make glass cards and win it 2 lives to none. And Mouth taking the first loss for Bean. And it was a heck of a game to see. If you have not watched the full thing, I highly recommend to go check out the VOD because it may have been the game of the season with how crazy the decisions were on both sides. In our 5th game of the week, we had an Onyx Division clash between Balenos Bear and HC Justin. Justin close to a couple of victories, but unable to get over the hump so far, hoping to get a win here. But unfortunately, in game 1 at least, the glass is what made all the difference. Both Justin and Bear making all the correct Joker decisions, ending up with very similar Jokers in the end. However, it was the glass difference that was able to give Balenos Bear the edge, a little bit of that deck manipulation. Game 2, we had Checker Deck Black Stake, and this ended up being a lot tougher of a seed than we were anticipating, with neither player really getting much online. But Bear was able to take this 2 lives to none, just edging out by a few thousand points over Justin. And then game 3, we had a photo Chad setup for Balenos Bear. That was not the case for Justin, and that was always going to be the difference, scoring 1 billion points to end things in a 4-0 life sweep, and Bear taking all 3 games in the match sweep in this game. To finish off the Onyx Division action in this week, we had Halion versus Rarran, one of the games of the week predictions in my mind. In game 1, we went to White Stake Ghost Deck, and it did not disappoint. The difference really ended up being a couple of ectos that Rarran ended up using, not hitting maybe the targets you wanted, in a Smiley Face Joker and an Acrobat. And the condensed hand size meant that Rarran was unable to field any red seal glass, which Halion had 3 of in the final hand and was able to take the game with 2 lives remaining. We moved on to game 2, which was once again Ghost Deck, but this time it was on Black Stake. And both these competitors would be doing a good job deck manipulating, but unfortunately for Halion, not enough economy to find the Chad and photo that Rarran did. This was always going to be a massive difference maker, and it is why Rarran took this game with 3 lives remaining. Game 3, the decider, was Checker Deck White Stake. And this one, Halion, despite winning 2 lives to none, losing a couple of lives, really had it in hand by the end. Similar Joker setups, Rarran even with a Seltzer, but the thing was Halion had plenty of glass to boot and was able to use that glass with the Photo Chat, with the Sock, with the Bloodstone to win the game and take the first match off of Rarran in this young season. C-Dubs and Edzy was our next match from the Bloodstone division, and we started off things on Plasma Gold Stake, which is just absolutely gross, and it was definitely gross indeed for Edzy, who would end up losing to a small blind. And C-Dubs actually swept this game 4 lives to none. Seemed going into this like C-Dubs maybe a little bit of Edzy's kryptonite, as C-Dubs was one of the only people during the regular season to take a map or a game off of Edzy. Moving into game 2, we went to White Stake, but this time on Black Deck, and Edzy was able to win this one. We had a Baron Mime per KO run with a Brainstorm, with a DNA, and Edzy was just able to kind of scale everything a little bit quicker versus C-Dubs. In the end, it was only a couple of E's that separated these two, but those couple of E's were enough to give Edzy the 3-0 life victory. The final game went back to Plasma Gold Stake, as Edzy didn't want to give up Gold Stake, and C-Dubs was going to force Edzy to play on Plasma if they were going to play Gold Stake. This time, it didn't work out for C-Dubs, as Edzy would take the game 2 lives to none off the back of a massive chip build with Odd Todd, Chad, and Hack. You combine that with the ice cream, and C-Dubs, however, was trying to get the molt going, just couldn't get it at the end. Edzy would take this match 2 games to 1. Finally, we had what I thought was going to be the game of the week, Fur versus Scooty. Felt that these two were very evenly matched, and game 1 was interesting. We moved to Orange Stake. Scooty's call there in Green Deck, which was Fur's call, made for a very, very entertaining matchup. However, the difference ended up being the deck manipulation. Scooty was able to create 5 glass jacks with purple seals. The purple seals lend themselves to make more cards, and he just kept making more of the glass purple seal. It was beautiful to watch. Really an expert class in how to deck manipulate. And on that final PvP, Scooty comes away with the victory. Game 2 went to Ghost Deck Gold Stake, and this time Scooty tried an interesting move, onking a couple of Polychrome Stuntmen. Didn't work for him, lost to the blind, and Fur took this 3 lives to none. Final game, we went to Plasma Gold Stake. As we all know, one of the toughest to play, and it went down all the way to the final PvP. And a Dusk with Scary Face would be the difference. Just a few more chips on that Scooty side. Those few more chips add up to a lot when you balance them on Plasma Deck. And Scooty would come away on the final life victorious in this one and take the match 2-1 over Fur. So after that set of week 3 games, let's go ahead and take a look at the standings. First of all, the Onyx division. Bear sits atop, not dropping a match thus far. The only undefeated player left in the league. Myself and Roffle are tied in second with 9 points. Rarran and Halion tied in fourth with 8 points. However, technically Halion right now has that tiebreaker, winning the head-to-head over Rarran. Gothic with 4 points in 6th place. Nito and Justin still looking for the first points on the season. Moving on to the Bloodstone division. Things are very tight. We have Bean with 9 points, Doc with 8, Edsy with 7, C-Dubs and Mouth with 6, Scooty with 5, Fur with 4, Nandre with 3. Everyone still in it to make the playoffs. Everyone kind of still in it to win the division. I mean, this has been extremely tight, and the wins are just flying back and forth through all these competitors in the Bloodstone division. It's going to be really interesting to see who ends up on top for those final couple playoff spots, and then kind of that battle at the top. Dr. Bean, Edsy, who ends up ending the season atop the Bloodstone division, we'll have to find out. The schedule for week 4, we have a game today, Fur versus Dr. Spectre at 3 p.m. Eastern time. Don't miss it. Then on Monday, we have 3 games. We got Edsy versus Mouth in the morning at 12 p.m. Eastern time. We got Rarran versus myself at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And then a nightcap, we got Bean versus Nandre at 7 p.m. Eastern time. You're not going to want to miss any of those games. Going to be very entertaining. Tuesday, we have 2 games. We got Nito and Halion at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Roffle and Baleno Spare at 5 p.m. Eastern. Wednesday, we have another late night game, C-Dubs versus Scooty at 8 p.m. Eastern. And then Friday, our second featured game of the week, we have HC Justin versus Gothic Lord UK at 3 p.m. Eastern. The first featured game of the week, of course, being Roffle and Baleno Spare. Both these games going to be very entertaining. The Onyx division, not going to want to miss out. Roffle and Bear basically battling it out for first place in Onyx division. Now for your fantasy recap of the week. Looking at the overall standings, Mr. Beanfan currently in the lead with 1,076 points. We have Kozak and Tygon both chasing after Mr. Beanfan. Of course, we're going to have some new prices going into week 4, but first of all, let's look at who took on week 3's crown, and that would be Holy Falcon. Holy Falcon, you have won a Major League Balatro hat. Please contact me if you wish to claim your prize. But let's go ahead and look at the price changes for week 4. And we're, for the first time, going to have a couple of $2 players. So Bean remains $6. Roffle moves up from 5 to 6. Rarran coming down from $6 to $5. We have Mouth moving up to $4, I believe. Gothic moving down to $3. Scooty for Nandre there in that 3 category. And then Nito and Justin now at $2. My team this week is going to be Bean, Halion, Gothic, Scooty. I'm going to be on the Bean bandwagon for this one. I believe Halion can score lots of points. I really do like Gothic Lord this week. And Scooty, I think, is always kind of a value there at $3. A very good player. Very good, as we saw with the deck manipulation. So outside of the crazy decisions Scooty sometimes makes, I really like him there at $3 this week. Time to preview some games. We got Fur versus Dr. Spectre in the first one. So the quick preview of this one is I believe we're going to be seeing some higher stakes gameplay. I believe Fur and Doc both don't mind playing on the higher stakes. I mean, if anything, I would imagine that Doc may take it lower stakes. We heard Doctor kind of giving some insight on a stream recently saying that they believe lower stakes gameplay leads to less divergence, less randomness, and Doc is very confident in their ability to win a game. They believe they can win any game. So that would lead me to believe they don't want to play with randomness. They do want to play on lower stakes. I'm more curious about the deck choice, though. If we do go high stakes, what is the deck choice for Doc? And then if we go lower stakes, specifically on first side, what deck do we want to play on that low stake gameplay? I'd be interested to see if we go black deck or green deck, something of that matter that's a little bit harder to get max value out of on first side, to maybe nerf Doctor a little bit in this one. Edzy versus Malf is going to be the second game of the Bloodstone Division on Monday, and Malf coming off that huge victory versus Bean. Edzy, is known as the Gold Stake Master. We know where this is going to be played. This is going to be played on Gold Stake. In fact, I would not be shocked if the first person in both or all three of these games choose the deck because they know the other person only wants to play Gold Stake. I would be shocked if we go anywhere but Gold Stake. I think, Edzy could throw in that curveball. Malf is always a wild card, so they could, do something unexpected and pick a different stake. But I really think this is going to be about the deck choice. And I think Edzy wants to play on Ghost deck. I think Malf, more open to playing other things. And I really have no idea where Malf would go with the decision. I could see Erratic. I could see Plasma to throw a wrench in things. But this is going to be very entertaining from the deck choice standpoint. But you are going to see incredible Gold Stake gameplay here. We're going to see Malf playing that very divergent, skip-heavy, risky path. We're going to see Edzy playing the most core Gold Stake Balatro that you can imagine. And we're just going to see what wins out in this scenario. I am very much looking forward to this matchup. My game versus Rarran will be the second game on Monday, the first one in the Onyx division this week. And I'm not excited for this one. It's going to be a tough one. Rarran practicing with the Doc this weekend, practicing a lot of Gold Stake, which makes me think that Rarran may want to take this to higher stake gameplay. If that does happen, I'm likely going to pick, the easier deck, something like a yellow deck, maybe a red deck, maybe Erratic deck. But I'm hoping these games are played on white stake, which I do believe Rarran's very good at. But my philosophy is I want to go toe-to-toe on Rarran when it comes to deck manipulation, joker choice, max value in the blinds. And that's where I'm going to try and get my edge over Rarran in this one. So I think what it is my choice, I'm definitely taking it to white stake. But I kind of have to see what the vibe is. If Rarran is already picking lower stakes, maybe I decide to go with the deck selection first. It's going to be a fun one. I think we're going to see some great high scores. I think you're going to see a lot of fantasy value in this game. I think what's going to make it tough for those kind of choosing their fantasy players today is which one of us to choose. I don't know. I think either one of us could score, 120 plus points this week with the high scores, but I have no idea which one of us actually wins the game, and that matters a lot for these fantasy points. Bean and Nandre will be the last game on Monday, and we know Bean's going to take it to white stake. We know Nandre kind of wants to take it to Plasma. So I'm curious. I think Nandre may switch up the gameplay here and actually choose Gold Stake. They saw Bean go down the mouth last week. We saw Bean actually, struggle a bit against Edzy. I would argue, again, that maybe Bean got slightly lucky in the games against Edzy on Gold Stake. So I would not be shocked if Nandre just wants to keep it on those high stakes, keep it on the randomness, the difficulty of that high stake gameplay. But to be fair, Plasma is also very different. Even on white stake, Plasma is something I don't think Bean practices a ton of. So that could also be an edge, even if we're on the lower stake difficulty for Nandre. I think we'll see some rushdown tactics similar to what we saw with Malf from Nandre, where I want to win the first 4 PvPs, and that is going to be the goal. So really entertaining match. If you can stay up late for this one, I highly recommend it. I'll be curious whether it's Plasma or whether it's Gold Stake from Nandre's choice on these games. I think you're going to see Bean have to be out of their element a little bit. And after a dominant first couple weeks, kind of getting stopped on your track in week 3, curious to see how Bean bounces back. Nito versus Halion will be happening on Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And last season, this was an extremely close, entertaining matchup. I do think we are once again going to see some black stake choices out of Nito, and I'm curious if Halion goes Gold Stake. I feel like Halion's felt pretty confident on the higher stakes difficulties this season compared to last, and maybe wants to take Nito to those higher stakes. I actually think, funny enough, that would favor Nito in this matchup in terms of I think Nito's handled the black through Gold Stakes pretty darn well. Halien's had some interesting seeds when deciding to go higher stakes, and maybe it could be a mistake to do so. I do think if we see white stake difficulty, the deck manipulation portion, the economy portion maybe favors Halien a little bit there, and that's where Halien may see more success. I think Nito, in a way, wants the game to be played out a little bit closer to the way Mouth plays out the game. And the key here for Nito, and the key has been the first few weeks, is that deck manipulation. All the right Joker decisions have been made. Plenty of economy has happened. It is just how to utilize those tarots in a very meaningful way to make, you know, a lot of cards. And let's be honest, probably a lot of glass cards, maybe some chariots, maybe it's lucky cards. But, you know, following that trajectory of getting enough deck manipulation has been Nito's weak point. And I think if Nito can conquer that in this game, they have a very good chance of pulling off the quote-unquote upset over Halien and getting themselves right back into that playoff contention. And our Tuesday game of the week, Roffle versus Balatro Spirit, 5 p.m. Eastern time. I'm so excited for this. I think this is going to be ridiculously entertaining. Roffle's going to take it the gold stake. Balatro Spirit is going to take it the white stake. But regardless, I think whether it's high stakes or low stakes, I think we're going to see extremely high scores. Last year, this matchup ended up disappointing a little bit as we got one of the absolutely most ridiculous seeds I've ever seen. Every single Joker was perishable rental. None of them were scoring. The only reason Roffle won was, you know, a slight differentiation in how they played the first ante, and the game was over in ante 2. And that was really disappointing. The second game that the two played was extremely entertaining, and I think we're going to get that in all 3 games here, as long as we don't get a murderous seed again on gold stake from Roffle. Baron Roffle, very evenly matched. I think these are 2 of the best players in the league. I think these are 2 of the best Balatro players, period. I don't know if Balatro Spirit always gets the credit that they deserve for being one of the best Balatro players. Came in second Twitch Rivals. You've heard me say it over and over again. Currently leading the Onyx division 3-0, only undefeated player left. But I think a lot of people would favor Roffle in this matchup just because Roffle has shown an ability, you know, coming off their championship season, to play lower stakes difficulties and match the opponent while having somewhat of an edge on that gold stake gameplay against pretty much everyone except maybe Edsy. So Roffle maybe a little bit favored in this matchup, but let's see if Balatro Spirit can keep their win streak going. And I honestly think, again, same thing as my match with Rarran, tons of fantasy points to be had here. It's really just who do you go with? Who do you think is going to actually win the match? If you hit on who wins this actual match, you are going to see fantasy points galore from your competitor. We got C-Dubs, we got Scooty on Wednesday. I know Scooty's going to take it to gold stakes. I think C-Dubs wants to keep it on white stakes, so I think the decision here will be the deck choices for the 2. And I do believe C-Dubs is going to make it as hard as possible on gold stakes, taking it to Plasma, which Scooty is not bad at by any means. I think they've showcased, and they've had to play it enough playing with Nandre, playing with Fur, that this one's actually going to be pretty evenly matched if we go Plasma Gold Stake. I maybe lean Scooty a little bit. But on the white stake gameplays, can Scooty change up their thought process enough to fully go into econ, deck manipulation, long-term gameplay mode to match C-Dubs on the white stake games? I don't know. Also, what deck do we choose if we're Scooty on these lower stakes gameplays? I don't know. And because of that, I have no idea how to call this game. I think it's going to be a really good one to watch if you can. I'll be casting this match on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And I just think we're in for a treat. I do think, I hate when it comes down to the coin flip. I'm usually wrong. Whenever I say this, it turns out to not be this way at all. But right now, my gut feeling is whoever wins that coin flip and gets 2 white stake gameplays or 2 gold stake gameplays has the advantage. Now, will things actually play out that way? Who knows? But I do think if Scooty or C-Dubs win that coin flip, C-Dubs gets the 2 white stake games, Scooty can get the 2 gold stake games. They'll be in a much better position for this one. Lastly, we got HC Justin versus Gothic Lord UK, our featured match on Friday. Gothic and Justin, I think, are going to have an interesting back and forth. Once again, Justin has consistently made the correct Joker choices, made pretty good econ choices. Similar to maybe Nito, Justin just needs to figure out that final little bit of deck manipulation, understand how powerful glass cards are, and they are going to be flying in this league. And that's something Gothic does understand very well, maybe a little bit unlucky to be sitting with only 4 points right now in the Onyx division. I do think Gothic is going to force Justin to play higher stakes, maybe black, maybe gold. But that might be a mistake. I think Justin's proven that they play very well in that high stake Balatro, and that's where their core knowledge is. I actually feel like Gothic's better play here is to force white stake and just go with that whole glass deck manipulation route, but I don't know if Gothic's actually going to do so. On Justin's side of things, I think maybe themselves picking gold stake and forcing this to be a little bit more randomness, a game a little bit more like Mouth versus Bean, would be in their favor. And again, generally speaking, on gold stake, it's a little bit less about the deck manipulation and a little bit more about the econ joker choices, which I think Justin has been doing incredibly well. Excited to cast this game on Friday, and don't miss it. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching the recap and the preview video. Hope to see you in the games this week. Don't miss out on anything. Links in the description down below. mlbalatro.com to get your schedule, the standings, learn about the creators, learn about the league, and get all the links that you need. You can also join the fantasy league down below. There is still a couple spots left if you want to compete on a weekly basis to try and get that prize of a Major League Balatro hat. But thank you so much for all the support. Hit the subscribe button, hit like, comment down below who your favorite fantasy player is this week, and we'll see you for the next one very soon.